The Global Panel on Agriculture and Food Systems for Nutrition has published a food systems policy tool. To discuss this tool, we are joined by Patrick Webb, who is Professor of Nutrition Science and Policy at Tufts University. Professor Webb, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
The publication of this policy tool is very timely given the United Nations Food Systems Summit, a real opportunity to galvanise action on food systems so they are transformed to produce healthier diets more sustainably. Professor Webb, I wonder if you could give us your thoughts on this summit.
Of course. I've been actually very pleasantly surprised at the traction that the idea has gained. The idea, not just that we need something different, that food systems as they are not actually delivering the healthy, sustained, nutritious diets that everyone needs, not just deserves, needs to have a healthy, active, and long life, but that something can and must be done urgently. The idea has caught fire in a sense that the need for food systems transformation represents a planetary challenge, a planet-wide challenge, along the same lines as climate change or biodiversity loss or animal extinction. This affects everyone around every country around the planet, everyone in those countries. We all eat every day, hopefully. Unfortunately, some people less than that. And that healthy diets are not a luxury, they are an essential part of human growth, development, and well-being. And the systems we have in place today are the systems that were created. They were designed 50 years ago to address hunger and famine, and they've done very well at doing that. But they are no longer fit for this real challenging purpose of today, which is to deliver not just appropriate quantities of food, but quality of food. So the Food System Summit is an historic moment in time where countries around the world are coming together to not just reflect on this planetary challenge, but to commit to doing things differently. So that is an important point in itself. But more important from a global panel perspective is that an event is an event. It's just a snapshot in time. What really matters, even more than this historic event, is what comes next. And that means focusing very much on the coming months, years, and even decades to support governments to put their commitments into action and to bring in all the stakeholders in food systems, the private sector, the civil society, NGOs, and so on, to be able to not just understand what needs to be done, but to play their part in that transformation post-summit.
Thank you, Professor Webb. The scale of the challenge of transforming food systems so they produce more nutritious, healthy diets, very well put there. A planetary challenge, as you describe it, on the scale of climate change or extinction even. You also mentioned turning commitment into action. What do you think are the key challenges for policymakers and decision makers to turn commitment into action to overcome some of these challenges so we can transform food systems?
These are complex problems, and to pretend there are simple solutions would be wrong. The solutions have to be complex because so many different sectors are involved. It's one thing to just say we need to grow more food and give responsibility to a Ministry of Agriculture or private sector companies. Transforming food systems requires more connectedness across the sectors, from farm to table, and even beyond that, to reduce food loss and waste post-consumer. Right. So there are many stakeholders, many ministries, many sectors of investment that need to shift their mindsets, shift their goals, shift their investment portfolios to achieve what has to be done in a linked up way. And that's complex, right? It's so much easier for a government to pick one intervention and go for it. This requires a review of how existing policies, investment strategies, program investments either work together or work in contradiction with these new goals of food systems transition steps. So it's complex. That does not mean it can't be done. The world has achieved complex things in the past. This is a new challenge. In many ways, it's fortuitous that it comes at a time of attention to climate change, at a time of attention to the need to change the way we produce food and what we produce for reforestation and carbon sequestration and so on. It comes at a time when we're focused more on equity and disparities within societies, because they're all linked. And so whatever happens next will, if it's done right, will enable us to have net positives and multiple wins across these different visions of the future. So governments are going to be, there's a risk of shell shock and sticker shock when they realize that actually things have to be done differently. But one of the things that the world has to help these governments understand is that the costs of doing nothing or continuing business as usual will be hundreds, if not 1,000 times greater than the cost of doing the right things now. So it's a focus then on informing, evidence-based information on what can be done, should be done, and why it should be done. How business as usual is not a tenable option at all. The time has passed for that, and there's great urgency for acting differently. And then giving these policymakers and their advisors and the other stakeholders the tools they need to think through the options, to understand that there's always going to be trade-offs. There's always going to be some winners and losers. There's always going to be some constituents against and some for. That's not new to any policymaker. So the issue is to give them the tools to think through these complex trade-offs, the evidence they need to make informed decisions, and the confidence to take this on. I think that's really how they can be supported.
Thank you. Complex, interconnected challenges, but not insurmountable. You also mentioned policy tools there. How do you think the Global Panel's food systems policy tool can help policymakers and decision makers overcome some of those complexities?
Tools are tools, right? They're either sharp tools that are very useful in your shed, or there are, the blunt, rusted tool that's at the back of the shed you haven't used for years. Hopefully, this is a sharp new tool that everyone wants to pick up off the shelf first because it's clearly useful. What it is you're right. It's one of those support mechanisms, one of those tools that I was alluding to that policymakers and there are many other collaborators and stakeholders will want to pick up because they find it useful. The idea being that it's realistic. It gives realistic options. It's realistic about the trade-offs. It's realistic about the complexity, but also realistic about the opportunity. So it's an easy to use but evidence-based tool that one can pick from. It's you can pick and come again type of approach. It doesn't have to be digested in one sitting. It needs to be a reference document, a reference tool that you go back to whenever you need to. The idea being that it gives concrete examples. It gives concrete evidence of what has worked in the past, what might work in the future, concrete evidence of the types of trade-offs that this policy versus that policy may be facing, and what are steps to reconcile those and come up with net win solutions. So it's not. It should be usable by anyone who thinks about these kinds of serious issues. What is serious about finding answers to those problems, and opens the door. It doesn't provide all the answers, but opens the door to how to think through the problem solving. And doesn't claim to give every answer to every context, but offers a way to find the answer for those contexts. And I'm very pleased that the global panel has released this, and very hopeful that a lot of people will find it very useful.
Thank you, Professor Webb. Finally, in your role as policy advisor, you're in a room with a policymaker, a key decision maker, with a copy of the policy tool in your hand. What's your take-home message for them?
I think the key message has to be that of remaining optimistic, right? It can be done. There are going to be challenges. There's going to be problems along the way, but nothing that is none of the examples that are in the policy tool are theoretical. They have been done. So the message is absolutely, this is so important, and whatever small role that you play in giving advice, in shaping government or business strategies, it is part of a much larger agenda, and everyone has a role to play, and everyone can do their bit to achieve these net positive multi-win outcomes. With that in mind, keep at it. Don't give up. It is possible, and achieving it will be part of a momentous change for the whole planet going forward.
Patrick Webb, Professor of Nutrition Science and Policy at Tufts University. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren.